Welcome back to the Obvious Choice podcast. I am so excited to be here with you today. Energized as always. I'm here with Ren Jones, aka MC Tuck Tuck, and Amber. What I, what I thought would be fun to do today is something that I've never actually done before, so I have no idea how it's going to go. But we talk about books a fair amount. I love books. And there are a few books that I revisit once every year, once every few years, that have been really impactful for me and that I've really made use of. You know, it's one thing to read a book and kind of fire through it and then move on to the next. It's another thing to study a book and to put into use the advice or some of the advice into a book and then look back on it in retrospect and be like, that's where that came from and that had a really positive impact on me personally or on my business. And so I thought it'd be kind of fun to walk through one of those books today. And I've picked out, 4 sections from this book. So we're going to be going through The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes. Chet Holmes, unfortunately, has passed away.
Oh.
But this was that's a damper. It was a while ago. But this book is kind of... it's kind of looked at by a lot of people in marketing sales as one of the gold standards. He was at the forefront of, as you'll hear, education-based marketing and particularly advertising and, of course, building sales teams. But what he also did is his advice into things like productivity and time management were phenomenal. And that helped me a fair bit. So this book, the first time that I picked this up, I remember I brought it with me to Koh Phangan, Thailand. It was in my suitcase of books. I've told that story before where I basically chased after Allison going there. And so at that time, I was writing a book. And all of my notes from writing a book were inside the books that I was reading. So I had, I was reading a whole bunch of books. Like there was 30 or 40 books that I had notes from that I was going to use to help me write this book as I was studying them. And then, of course, I decide to chase after Allison because my mom gave me the best advice anybody's ever given me, which is you better get your ass on the plane or you're going to lose her. But I had all of my research in these physical books. So I actually traveled around Thailand and Southeast Asia. We went to Vietnam. We went to Cambodia on that trip with an entire suitcase full of books. And this was one of them in there. And so I remember reading this and I remember kind of opening it, and it's kind of like a cheesy title to the book. And I remember opening it and being like, yeah, this is kind of cheesy. I'm not sure what I'll get from it. And you can just see the amount of notes if you're on YouTube, like that I've written in this thing, just tagged the living crap out of it. And it was fun flipping through it for this episode and actually thinking, okay, well, like, how have I made use of this stuff and how has it impacted me? So there's 4 pieces. I'll tell you all the names of them, and then we're going to go through the actual sections in the book and talk a little bit about them and talk a little bit about how they've impacted me. And when there's actually a place where you said something in a mentorship group that actually aligns beautifully into one of the sections as well. So we're going to hit on that too.
Was that Trump?
No.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean,
Sweet.
maybe you were. I don't know.
Who knows?
But,
It's been one of those months, John.
you didn't slur your typing words.
Okay, very good. All right. Functioning in my dysfunction. I love it.
You
do I get a sticker for that? Let me get
you
a sticker.
functioned with your phalanges in your dysfunction. Yeah, you get a sticker. So the 4 things that we're going to talk about. One is proactivity. Oh, you actually have stickers. You actually
you guys go ahead. Talk amongst yourselves. I need to place
That's what's
sticker.
happening. You quite literally have stickers, I think, with your face on them. Is that what that is?
Amber sent these beauties to me. So
okay. Good.
I participated in the podcast today, so I got to put a sticker. You go ahead, John.
You actually, this is the thing now. This is what's happening.
I participated today.
You have a podcast. Okay, so what is that? Because I was not aware of this.
I've got a Ren's podcast chart here.
Okay.
And
Ren's
when I do certain
chart.
things, I get to put a sticker. So this line is that I participated today. You can't really see it. If you're on YouTube, you probably still can't see it because of the glare. But I participated today, so I've gotten to utilize one sticker. I was here 2 minutes late, so I can't fill out the one today for showing up on time. But yeah, maybe next time. Who knows?
Just to be clear, Amber, is this something that I paid for? Okay. That's cool.
Well, it's not as fun now, Amber. Damn it, you shouldn't have said that. See if I can work in a Love Boat reference
I
today to
don't.
go
I
two for
don't.
two of those stickers.
I don't charge John for my intrusive thoughts that I have to
Okay.
follow through on.
Well, you can do better next time.
So the four things we're going to talk about from this book. Number one is proactivity. Number two is the difference between tactics and strategy. Number three is how to build better buyers. And number four is to understand that most people aren't buyers yet and what to do about that. So, start at the beginning, proactivity. Touching back on after some technical problems. We're back. I'm picking up from the book, The Ultimate Sales Machine, reading through some of my favorite quotes, and we're going to talk about kind of how they impacted me in life. And then we've got Len coming in as well at one point. He doesn't know where, but where he's an excellent example of one of the principles here. So I'll read you a little bit right now from it. This is just one line. Some of the other stuff that I'm going to read from the book is a little bit longer, but it says, to build your business into the ultimate sales machine, you need to be in a primarily proactive mode. It sounds very obvious, doesn't it? But think to yourself, how much of your time over the course of your day is actually spent proactively doing things that are going to work for you for the future versus reacting to all the shit that is getting thrown at you all of the time? My guess is that if you're not very, very careful, the vast majority of your time is going to be spent reacting to stuff. Messages, DMs, I don't even know, doom scrolling, like things that you feel like you should do for no other reason than they're just present. They're just things that are thrust in your face, but presence doesn't equate to importance. And so this is where time management really comes into play. And Chet in this book actually gives 6 steps to great time management. I have only really applied 3 of them over the years. And so I'm going to talk about the 3 that I've applied. The other ones, they're things that I just haven't found to be as important. What's so funny, Amber?
Slacker.
I don't know why. Yeah, it's just. Well, I've only done 3 of the 6. I don't.
You have that
Way to
shit
time
away, yo.
manage. I've made it 3 out of 6.
Have that shit whack,
That's
yo.
where my
I don't do
brain
that.
went.
I don't do them other 3 shits.
In a completely unrelated note, I'm in the market for a few new podcast hosts. If you or anybody you know knows a white woman and a black man that want to be co-hosts on a
Free
podcast,
time mid-afternoon. They have their afternoons free.
and
I
have free
called it.
times.
I called it, Ren. You told me we were getting fired soon.
It was about time. Honestly, this thing went longer than I thought it would.
It's been a good run.
It's been a good run.
So the first one, Ren, is touch it once.
Oh, here we go.
There we go. Yeah. If you touch it, take action.
That's also what she said.
Thank you, Amber. That's the first step to great time management. Yeah, we're talking about time management, Amber.
It's been a long day, okay?
Don't
Step
open
to a lot
that
of
email
great
or
things.
letter until you're ready to deal with it. The entire idea behind this is, I mean, we've all played that game where you go into your email and you look at all the emails there and you open up an email and you read it and you're like, ah, shit, I'll deal with this later, and then you close it and then you put it on unread. How many times a day do you do that? And you haven't actually done anything. Like, you haven't accomplished anything. This idea with the touch at once is that when you go into accomplishing a task, you want to make sure you get the thing done and checked off your list. And so the way that I put this into action, specifically to email, because that's where I find that I fall into this kind of trap the most, is After reading Chet's book, I stopped looking at email as a task and I started looking at it as a place where tasks accumulate. So instead of saying I'm going to deal with my email, one of my tasks became I'm going to organize my email. And then my tasks became I'm going to work through the different tasks that are in my email. So for example, I use a whole bunch of labels in my email. And so there are labels for newsletters. There's a label for need to pay, where invoices go. There's a label for questions or inquiries, right? Whatever it is. Your label might be like programming questions, or might be invoices, or might be whatever, follow-ups to pay people. And then I use a combination of automation filters in Gmail. So for example, like newsletters all get automated into the newsletter folder. And as a result, I don't even see them in my inbox until I'm ready to read them. And what that allows me to do then is that allows me to not even think about it, to not even think about who this person is or whether I want to read it, and have a block in my schedule that's basically to read. And then I open up the newsletters and I read the newsletters from that week. And the same thing with need to pay. Anytime anybody sends me an invoice, it's just known across the company that I pay at the end of the month. And so any invoice that I get, I just tag need to pay. It gets filtered in there. Boom, it's out of my inbox. I don't even think about it. And then the last weekday of the month, I go through the need to pay and I just pay everybody at once. This is how you deal with email in a productive, systematic way. Because email, you're kind of forced to be responsive. You can't really be proactive, but you need to get that shit out of your hands as much as possible. And the touch it once accomplishes that. When? If you touch it once, you get it out of your hands as fast as possible.
That sounds reasonable.
Thank you.
I have no response.
Number 2. In the 3 of the 6 time management tips that I do.
In the 50% follow through that I have on these tips.
Imperfect action, guys. Imperfect
But
action.
like, if you think about it, man, 50% follow through in a book is pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yes, it is.
10% would be
So-
amazing, to be perfectly honest with you.
Uh-huh. Number 2, make lists. I mean, this is something that everybody tells you to do. Like, make lists, make productivity lists, whatever it is. I don't actually make a lot of lists. I think most lists that people make are actually a way for them to productively procrastinate, Amber. But what I do think, though...
Says the man that sent me a book about checklists.
which you have not read yet.
No, yeah, exactly.
So
But I don't
this
like...
should be
I don't
made.
like... So what Chet actually says is he gives the advice of create a list of no more than 6 things to do a day and make it the night before. So that way when you sit down to work in the morning or in the afternoon, whenever you're sitting down to work, you know exactly what you're doing. You shouldn't sit down in a dedicated work time and say, okay, what am I going to do now? Right? You should have that in front of you. He gives the advice to do 6. He basically says 3 top and then 3 almost like filler tasks if you have extra time. So whatever the most important things are for you to achieve that day, right? 1, 2, 3, prioritize them. And then 3 filler tasks in case you happen to have extra time. You at least know what you're going to jump to if you have that extra time. I don't do the 3 filler tasks because, as we already established, I only do 50% of what I'm told to do. But what I do, is the night before, I list out my 3 most important things to achieve the next day. To the point where, I mean, in the Online Trainer Academy for the longest time, I sent notebooks to people that allowed them to literally write out the 3 tasks. Very, very simple.
Beside the water bottles, that was the most requested resend. Like, we got so many emails about this thing, asking for another one to be sent or how to order more or whatever. So freaking popular.
I still have lots of them, so if you want one, send Amber a message, amber@theptdc.com, with your mailing address. And Amber's going to align that all really, really nicely in a spreadsheet for me so that I can print out the labels and put on a stamp for you and put it in the mail. Mm-hmm. But all that was, it was the simplest thing ever. It was just the night before, Write down the 3 most important things that you're going to achieve the next day. That's it. All right. Okay. The next one is on page 19, according to my list. Here it is. This is step 6 of 6 of the productivity part from Chet. He says, ask yourself, will it hurt me to throw this away? This idea has fundamentally improved my life in so many ways, it's hard to describe. What he says is, studies show that 80% of all filed or stored information is never referred to again. So why hold on to it? To determine whether or not to keep something, ask yourself, will it hurt me to throw this away? Could you get it again if you needed it? The answer is usually yes. We are so good at accumulating stuff, at taking more, at capturing more, at storing more, and yet we never think how much space this takes up. Now, it might be space on our servers if it's like data, but also, will it hurt me to throw this away? I think about that with just shit that we accumulate in my house, so like physical space. I think about that in terms of just mental load, right? Will it hurt me to just not do this thing that I used to do before, to throw away this type of, like we don't publish other people's articles anymore on the PTDC blog. Like, will it hurt me to throw this away? Just because you were doing something before, it doesn't mean that you need to do it now. And so ask yourself over and over and over and over again, if you're feeling overwhelmed, will it hurt me to throw this away? And you might be surprised at how much you can get rid of and how much of a difference opening that space makes for you. Anything on those, guys, before I get into the difference between tactics and strategies on page 59?
Can we better define what will it hurt you to do this? Because I think there's a difference between, like, it pains me because I put all of this work and effort into something and it hurts me to let it go. So how do we better define that so it's more productive?
Okay, tell me what sunk cost is, Amber.
You're talking about sunk cost fallacy. So
Yes.
I have a lot of projects like that where I've put blood, sweat, and tears into things, and then I look at it and it makes me cry because I think it's cool, but then nobody likes it. And so it just kind of sits there, and so I don't get to use it, but it hurts me to let it go, but I put effort into it. I could either try to push it on people and do something with it, or I could let it go because it's not worth my time, effort, energy, money to keep working with it.
Right, but it's not benefiting you in any tangible way right now. So even though you did the thing, even though you put work into the thing, there's a lot of things that I've put work into over the years where I look back at and I say, on one hand, oh, maybe this was a waste of time. Oh, shit. Like, I put money, I put time, I put effort into that. And it sucks it didn't work out, or it sucks it didn't achieve what I hoped that it would achieve. Believe me, I got a lot of those skeletons in my closet. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I do think that this is airy-fairy shit, but I do think that some weird combination of all of our experiences, and the more shit that we try, the more interesting shit we're going to be able to do. There's a great meme. It was this guy who looked like this nerdy guy, and he was drawing this chart, and he is like, if you wanna be a success, if you see here, success is on the y-axis and it's just a straight line, and he's like, so if you want a success at like a level of 7, and he circles 7, and then he draws the line across the line, and then he goes down and goes, you need about a level 7 amount of fuck around. But if you want to
fuck around and find out,
the fuck around and find out. But if you go up and you want a level 10 of success, then you'll see here, according to this chart, you need a level 10 of fuck around and find out. I think it went viral because of how true it was. You got to fuck around and find out.
yes,
And that makes you better, that makes you understand things better, that makes you understand what doesn't work, which is almost as valuable, if not more valuable, than what does work. And also, I think people really respect others who put themselves out there and try shit. even if it doesn't work. People notice. People see these things. People see you putting yourself out there and working hard and being yourself. And they respect the hell out of it. They might not say anything, they often won't, but as we've already established, it's the lurkers, not the likers, who buy. Mm-hmm. So whether or not somebody is interacting or engaging with your post today actually has very little impact on whether it's going to benefit you in the future or not. I respect the hell out of people I see trying stuff. But if that thing doesn't work, well, you got to get to the next level or fuck around and find out what might. Which means you're going to need to leave it. And so that's... I bet you didn't expect me to bring up the fuck around and find out.
I'm so proud. I'm so proud. It's a favorite of mine. So I love it.
Wonderful.
So yeah, so there's a difference between it's hard to let go because it hurts your heart versus like it will hurt you to let it go because there's some actual consequences of the thing by letting it go, right?
Yeah,
so differentiating that I think is important. Go on.
Okay. So here's the second topic from Ultimate Sales Machine that has had a real big impact on me. This is a little bit more reading from the book, so it's 2 paragraphs, but I think it's important enough to read. To make sure you understand the difference between a tactic and a strategy, here are some simple yet essential definitions. A tactic is a method or technique used to achieve an immediate or short-term gain. You run ads or send direct mail pieces to get leads. You go on a sales call to make a sale. You attend trade shows to meet with potential buyers and get more leads. These are examples of tactics. A strategy is a carefully defined and detailed plan to achieve a long-term goal. In business, a strategy is the overall impact, the ultimate position you would like to achieve in the market. To think like a brilliant strategist, you will design and combine your tactics with the long-term strategy in mind. In addition, you will constantly ask yourself and your team, how many strategic objectives can we accomplish with each tactic? Okay. There's a lot there. But what this really comes down to is you need to work backwards from the strategy you've established and not work forwards from a tactic you assume to be the only way to achieve something. I say this in the book in a different way. I say work backwards from the problem, not forwards from the perceived solution. A lot of the time we hear, how do I increase my social media to get more clients? Like, back the fuck up, Jennifer.
So harsh.
I'm definitely pulling that out separately from the podcast.
So harsh. Gosh.
How do you know that social media is the best way for you to get clients? If you need a few clients, is it the best? It might be what you land on as you go through this exercise and work backwards. If it is, my guess is you'll probably use it differently than trying to create reels and entertain around an idea. But it may be a tactic that will work to achieve your desired outcome, right? Or it might not. But it is a tactic. And no tactic is the right tactic to choose unless you first understand your strategy. Because even if you figure out a tactic and even if you happen to land on the absolute perfect tactic, you would not even be able to recognize it as such without a strategy. Which means you'd still go to bed that night. You'd still worry about what you got done because Billy, the IG Fit kid over there, was doing some other jumpy, twirly, squatty thing. And you weren't doing that, and look at him, and it looks like he's having all of this success. So, oh my God, existential crisis, pop in, I'm going to try something different tomorrow. This is why, Jennifer, you don't assume a tactic when you go into it. Because even if it's the right tactic, you still don't even know that. And you're still going to worry about it not being the right tactic and not be confident in it and jump out to something else.
Absolutely.
You got to work backwards. Len, what were you going to say?
Yeah, this is something that I run into a lot with our students, right? Because they throw social media tactics around or enrollment tactics around. And what I usually introduce to them is on my 4 week strategy. What I use over the course of 4 weeks was week one is engagement week for me. So I'm building a greater, more engaged following because week two is instructional for me. It's education week. I'm proving to that following that I have deep understanding of their specific problem. Because week three for me is social proof, and that's proving either my certifications, accolades in this industry, things that I've done because I want them to trust that I'm a good source of information. And week four is my launch. So my overall strategy for gaining clients is not only monthly, but it's weekly. And in the context of each weekly strategy, there are tactics that I use that are specific to that week. I'm sharing a lot of content. I'm commenting on a lot of content. Week one, that's a strategy. I'm answering a lot of questions. That's my tactic in week one. Week two, I'm providing a lot of information, short form, easily digestible, but very, very specific to my demographic. I don't have to worry about the other stuff that people might be doing on the internet. Week three, I'm sharing my stories about testimonials. I'm sharing my credentials. I'm sharing if I had this line in John Goodman's book. Look, here's where he highlighted it and sent it to me. I'm important in this business. You can trust me. That's a tactic. Week four, I'm doing my 5160, 5190 for me. Doing my DMs, getting enrollment calls. Those are all tactics. But what I see so often with our students is them throwing all of the things that I just said willy-nilly at any point during the course of the day. And then, like you said, getting frustrated at night because, oh shit, what did I actually do? Did I do the right stuff? So the absence of the strategy is, I see it as something that's consistently problematic for some of our students who just don't know what to do when. They got a lot of tactics in their pocket, but they got no target to aim at. I love this one.
You got a lot of tactics. You got a lot of tactics, man. What I like about that, Len, is a few things. I wrote down a few notes. One is you're using the same platform in different ways based off of strategically what you want to achieve at that time. I think that's very important. I think it's important as we're thinking about potentially leveraging these platforms for whatever desired outcome, that we know what we're trying to accomplish with the platform and we measure the metrics based off of our goals, not the platform's goals. Because if you don't, then you're going to measure it based off of the superficial insights based on the platform, which has a very distinct goal misalignment with your goals, right? Their goal is to addict you and get you to stay on the platform as long as possible. Your goal is to get the fuck off of that platform as fast as possible and just use it to generate business. That's a little bit different. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? And so number one, I like that. Number two, because you've done that process of working backwards, it has repeatability to it, which means that you can continue to make each step better every time you run it out. Right, when you build this repeatable 4-week cycle, it doesn't have to be a 4-week cycle, but in Ren's case it is. When you build this repeatable cycle, you know what to execute on when, so you're not feeling bad about not doing stuff at a certain point in time because you know there's a time and place for it all. But you also can then look at these things in distinct finite isolation and look at what worked and what didn't work and continue to get better stepwise over time at this one system. And the final thing is, man, people come to expect it, don't they?
Right.
People miss an enrollment cycle, but they watch it and they know that they're going to be ready at another time. And because they've seen 2 or 3 or 4 cycles of it, there's comfort in knowing what to expect. I think that in business, in marketing, expectancy is actually becoming increasingly important. And when I say expectancy, A lot of it is kind of conditioning. It's humans are not very good in random inputs coming at them all the time. There's not a
Right.
lot of trust there. It makes us very uncomfortable. And yet that's kind of what our media has become. It's just like stuff thrown at us, which is why things like a weekly newsletter has become so much more popular in the last couple years. It's like, that you're going to get my 5 Reps Friday newsletter every single Friday morning at 7 a.m. You know the exact format that it's in. You know exactly what to look for where. And over time, you begin to expect it. That's why that email has a 40-50% open rate on it. And that's why those types of emails do well. It's expectancy. The same with this podcast. This podcast is published every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 7 a.m. We have not missed one. Thank you, Amber. We have not missed getting one out at that time. I don't think ever. And as a result, even if you go away and come back, because I can't expect reasonably that I'm going to be able to rely on a notification or an algorithm or even an email being delivered to trigger you in that moment to check something out. Instead, I've got to build that expectancy in you so that you might not listen to this podcast for a long time. But then you're looking for another show and you're like, yeah, I know those guys. I know how there's comfort in knowing what this kind of format is and when it comes out. And you come back. And it's the same with emails. It's the same with what you're talking about, Len, with social media, which I think is really, really smart. So nice work. Number 3, things I picked up from this book, call it Building Better Buyers. And so this one, we talk about this a lot. I'll read you a little bit here. Every buyer can be taught how to be a better buyer of your type of product or service. When we had a message in our mentorship Facebook group that Ren came in, and just to give you an idea of how good his answer was, 8 people liked the original post in the group, and 19 people liked or hearted Ren's response. That's how good his response was. So the message was just this. The post was this. I don't get how people pay money to be in a program, and then they go off and do their own workouts. They still do ab circuits instead, claiming that it's given them results before. When I explain that abs come from a calorie deficit, you need to progressively overload ab movements. It doesn't seem like they believe me. How do I prevent this from happening? Is it how I'm explaining things, or are some people just not going to be receptive? So these are some of the types of questions. Like, yeah, we teach you like marketing and client generation and all that stuff in the mentorship, but we also like teach you really deep coaching stuff, because these are the types of things that can be really frustrating when you're
Right.
coaching clients is, hey, these people are paying money for my expertise, but then they're not following it, right? And then they're jumping in these highly marketed kind of quick fix type things, and it can be really hard to get over. And so, Ren, what did you say?
I said this is an opportunity for you to educate your clients, right? So often we get students again in the online trainer academy, and I don't know what to post. What should I post? And my comment here was, this is the type of stuff you post. You teach your clients, your potential clients, what your philosophical leanings are in terms of your coaching, so that by the time someone passes through those stages of contemplation and comes to you, I didn't say this specifically, but this is what I insinuated in the message, John. By the time they come to you, they are already preaching your philosophy to you. Hey, Ren, I want to lose weight, but I know you don't do calorie counting because it's not usually practical for busy moms over 30. And I know that the scale is not at, like, people come to me and they regurgitate all of the content that I put out there to educate
Yeah.
them on how to work with me up front. And so many of our coaches underutilize that method of creating better buyers, right? Informing them up front. And I think it's just something that they don't think about. But I also said, as you deal with these issues, which you are invariably going to do throughout the course of your career, you'll never get to a level of coaching where somebody doesn't pay you and then do the exact opposite of what they pay for.
Sure.
It happens to everybody. But as you have these experiences, use that frustration and go now and create content around this issue that you've had, right?
Yep.
Because that's where a lot of my content comes from, just being frustrated by the fact that people won't listen. Just listen, damn it, just listen. So that's kind of what I said.
It's building better buyers. It's educating people at the front end so that when they start to buy with you. I mean, a company who's done this arguably better than anybody else in our space is Precision Nutrition. And there was an episode that we did very, very early on, actually. Amber, do you mind grabbing the number for it? Selling deep health to clients who don't care yet. Because it has become very frustrating for a lot of people who've done that system, that they're so bought into the PN idea of deep health, and obviously they should be. It's a super important idea. But then they're selling to clients based off of like very quick wins. And then they're trying to push on them deep health principles, and their clients aren't buying into it. It's like, yeah, because PN spends millions of dollars a year, has spent millions of dollars a year in content and in basically teaching people about this idea. So they have earned the right to enter in with their client. And they basically built better buyers for their types of services. When somebody else who has not done that, work to earn that, well, they can't expect the benefits of it with that type of clients. And so we talk about that in that episode, which I'll give you the link at the end. I'll recommend you have a listen to it. But one of the things that you said here, Ren, in your response that I thought was really smart is you said, as you're feeling frustrated in the moment, it's a great time to channel that energy into some content creation about this type of misunderstanding. Do a live podcast called The Truth About Abs, or do a carousel on IG about the top 3 things you shouldn't add, or the top 3 reasons you shouldn't add things to the program you paid for. So, yeah, frustrated, whatever. Throw some weights up and down, bang some medicine balls, right? Get that frustration out. But once you do, channel that into something positive and create content out of it. Right? Begin this process of building these better buyers for your service. Again, this goes into this proactive, not reactive type of business, doesn't it? If you proactively build better buyers, well, then you reactively have to deal with less bullshit.
Right.
You're always going to deal with some bullshit.
And that's something, I know we got to move on, but that's something specifically that I learned from you, John, is that when you create the content, you just get to say, here's a link, read these shits, instead of a whole long answer explaining, yeah, coincidentally, we did a podcast about that. Here's the link. Go fix yourself.
Yep. Go fix yourself. Okay. The final piece from this book, and this is probably the single most important aspect of the Online Trainer Academy, is this. And so it's this idea that most people aren't buyers yet. So here from the book, The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes, he says, 20 years of research has shown me that there's always a very small percentage of folks buying now. 3%. About 3%, I'm skipping around a bit, about 3% of potential buyers at any given time are buying now. Right now. That percentage drives all commerce. My further research concludes that 7% of the population is open to the idea of buying. This is the percentage who may be dissatisfied with their current item or provider and are not opposed to change, but who may not be quote-unquote buying now. The remaining 90% fall into one of 3 categories. The top third are what I call not thinking about it. They're not against it, they're not for it, but they're just not thinking about it. The next third are what I call think they're not interested. So at first pass, they're not neutral like the first third. They'd reply, I don't think I'm interested. And then the final third are what I call definitely not interested. These folks are happy with what they simply have, or they don't need it, right? So if you walk out there, so he gives the example of selling office equipment. So put this to whatever you sell, but he gives the example of selling office equipment. Right? He says, if you walk out there and say, I'm here to tell you why we have the greatest office equipment in the world, you're going to have 90% of the audience get up and leave. Okay. Now, if you were to say, the 5 ways our office equipment can benefit you, it really only appeals to 90% of the people. But what if your title had a broader appeal? How about the 5 ways you're wasting money in your operations and administration? And he says, I'm not saying that this is going to rivet the executives to their chairs, but they're not leaving either. They'll stay to hear a little bit more. And this is also true for an ad with a headline. Last little bit in this section, because I think it's really, really important. And I'm skipping around a fair bit over a couple pages that I've highlighted. He says, the hardest thing we need to do today is grab the attention of potential buyers and keep their attention long enough to help them buy your product. I'm going to say that again. The hardest thing we need to do today is grab the attention of potential buyers and keep their attention long enough. The approach of offering some education of value to them gives you a significant opportunity to attract more buyers and build more credibility. I call this education-based marketing. Now, this book was written a long time ago. This was one of the first times that anybody had really published and spoken about education-based marketing. It seems ubiquitous today, and a lot of it was brought upon by Chet Holmes. And I'll end with this. He says, and here's a line you should write down. You will attract way more buyers if you are offering to teach them something of value to them than you ever will attract by simply trying to sell them your product or service. Okay, here's what this all means. The longer that you can stay in somebody's mind, the better chance that you're going to make sales to that person. 3% of people are actively looking to buy right now. If you run an ad, if you do a call to action, what you are doing is you're competing over the 3% of people that are out there that potentially want to buy a product or service like yours right now. That's a tiny percentage, which means that you are competing with literally every other person trying to make a sale right now for a tiny percentage of the market. But what the entire Obvious Choice book is about is how to be the obvious choice, because by the time that 3% is open to buying and open on the market and responding to ads, all of the obvious choices have already been purchased from. Because those are the people that had built inroads in the communities that these people are in. Those are the people that had built trust and reputation towards these folks via, could be education-based marketing, could be just by helping or networking in the right places. So that when somebody enters in, right, maybe somebody in that top tier of the remaining 90% finally gets into the point where they're actively thinking about it. Or the 7% of people that are open to it but not actively buying. When they get to the point where they're ready to actively buy, the first thing that they do, I mean, think about your own patterns. The first thing that we do is we think, oh, okay, well, who do I know that knows something about this? They're not saying, oh, I hope that I see an ad right now. They're not even going to Google it yet. They're going to say, if they say, oh, man, my friend Steve was telling me about this guy that really helped him with this thing a while back. Yeah, I'm going to ask Steve for that thing. Or, hey, man, I've been really enjoying this person. They've helped me understand this thing better. They're going to reach out to that person right away. They're never going to respond to an ad. And this is the key that I wish more people understood. Because by the time that you can measure a conversion, all of the obvious choices have been hired. The only reason that we put so much effort into measuring things like conversions is because you can measure them. You can't measure, I mean, really, the 97% of customers that are not actively looking to buy yet, but you've been building some sort of expert status towards as you've been going about your day in the right places to the right people for often years. This is when business becomes easy. And the first time that I really clued into that was this book, was The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes. And so it's been fun to share a lot from this book with you all. I don't know, this is fun. What do you guys think? Should we do more breakdowns and stuff like this from some of these books?
I love it.
2 thumbs up from Amber. This book was written in 2007, by the way, for anybody interested. So it's like, it doesn't talk about the internet. Like, you're not going to learn internet marketing from this. I think I joined Facebook in 2007.
I did. I joined in 2007.
Yeah, that's when you joined?
Yeah. Joined up.
Amber, do you have the number of that podcast?
I do. It
nicely
is
done.
episode 21. Selling deep health coaching to clients who don't care yet.
Cool. So if you're looking for another podcast to listen to, check that one out if you've dug what we've been speaking about here. Unless your name's Jennifer, in which case you probably hate me. But episode, what do you say, 22?
21.
Episode 21. So episode 21, selling deep health coaching to clients who don't care yet. That was, I don't want to say that was the episode that broke open our podcast, but that was one of the first ones that I remember we started to get a lot of messages about from people saying it was just really helpful. It really helped them understand a problem that was frustrating to them. You know, I know that fitness is not a 30-day challenge. I know that it's not a quick fix. My clients know it's not a quick fix. So why aren't they buying into this? You know, what's wrong? Is it me? Is it whatever? And episode 21 will really help you understand kind of what to do in a lot more detail than what we spoke today to help make better buyers for your service. Because at the end of the day, yeah, better buyers are going to probably pay you more, definitely stay with you longer, but more than anything else, you can be able to help them more. That's pretty important. So thank you for being here. Thanks for hanging out with us on the Obvious Choice podcast. Time to go take my son to Code Ninja. He's learning how to computer code. So
That's
he's
awesome.
been digging it. Yeah. He's not into sports so much, which is fine. Because I don't want to be that kind of dad who drives his kid to sports all the time. Like, I am not upset that Calvin doesn't play hockey. Last thing I want to do is be like my dad at 5:30 in the morning on a goddamn Sunday morning, drinking a half glass of orange juice with a stinking kid taking him to hockey practice. I am not. I'm very grateful to my dad for doing that for me. I am not that kind of father.
I want you to exclaim, has anybody seen Excalibur?
We'll leave it on that inside joke for anybody who gets it. All right, I got some peanut butter and M&Ms to finish. And,
Good for you, John. I need to buy some
take care of
fillers for my
yourselves.
sticker board. Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye.